Today is March 6th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today out of the Big Book, we are plugging along Chapter 4, We Agnostics. We'll be reading page 53. Out of the 12 and 12, we are well into Step 7. We'll be reading page 75. And of course, we'll read the 24 hours a day and daily reflection. So with that, hope y'all are doing well this morning, my friends. It is Friday. We made it through another work week. Life is good. I woke up sober today. And you know, the nice thing is that every day can feel like a Friday, right? Every day is just that 24 hours. If I look at it in that frame, that even if something goes wrong, I can get right back on it and pivot and restart the day over at any time. This is one of the many beautiful things I've learned in sobriety. So let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. All right, my friends. So if you recall from yesterday's reading, we have been talking about some demonstrations here of how we had to kind of discard some old ideas for new. We talked about the Wright brothers a little bit. We talked about Galileo a little bit. And this was written in the 1930s. So, think about how much things have changed already. So discarding old ideas for new ones here. But one of the last lines we read yesterday, we agnostics and atheists were sticking to the idea that self-sufficiency would solve our problems. When others showed us that God's sufficiency worked with them, we began to feel like those who insisted the rights would never fly. So with that, we are on page 53. Logic is great stuff. We liked it. We still like it. It is not by chance that we were given the power to reason, to examine the evidence of our senses, and to draw conclusions. That is one of man's magnificent attributes. We agnostically inclined would not feel satisfied with a proposal which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. Hence, we are at pains to tell why we think our present faith is reasonable, why we think it more sane and logical to believe than not to believe, why we say our former thinking was soft and mushy when we threw up our hands in doubt and said, we don't know. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? Arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith. We couldn't duck the issue. Some of us already walked far over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of faith. The outlines and the promises of the new land had brought luster to the tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. Friendly hands had reached out in welcome. We were grateful that reason had brought us so far. But somehow, we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we've been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we did not like to lose our support. That was natural. But let us think a little more closely. Without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? For did we not believe in our own reasoning? Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we have been faithful, abjectly faithful to the God of reason. So, in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. Out of the 12 and 12, we're on Step 7. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. And one of the last lines we read yesterday on page 74, character building through suffering might be all right for saints, but it certainly didn't appeal to us. Talk about our mindset beforehand. But I love the beginning of page 75. That's why I think I read it again yesterday. Then in AA, we looked and listened. So let's read the rest of page 75. Then in AA, we looked and listened. Everywhere we saw failure and misery, transformed by humility into priceless assets. We heard story after story of how humility had brought strength out of weakness. In every case, pain had been the price of admission into a new life. But this admission price had purchased more than we expected. It brought a measure of humility, which we soon discovered to be a healer of pain. We began to fear pain less and desire humility more than ever. During this process of learning more about humility, the most profound result of all was the change in our attitude toward God. And this was true whether we had been believers or unbelievers. We began to get over the idea that the higher power was a sort of Bush League pinch hitter, to be called upon only in an emergency. The notion that we would still live our own lives, God helping a little now and then, began to evaporate. Many of us who had thought ourselves religious awoke to the limitations of this attitude. Refusing to place God first, we had deprived ourselves of His help. But now the words, "Of myself I am nothing, the Father doeth the works," began to carry bright promise and meaning. We saw we needn't always be bludgeoned and beaten into humility. It could come quite as much from our voluntary reaching for it as it could from unremitting suffering. A great turning point in our lives came when we sought for humility as something we really wanted, rather than something that we must have. It marked the time when we could commence to see the full implication of Step 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. "24 hours a day, March 6th. AA Thought for the Day. In AA, we must surrender, give up, admit that we're helpless. We surrender our lives to God and ask Him for help. When He knows that we're ready, He gives us, by His grace, the free gift of sobriety. And we can't take any credit for having stopped drinking because we didn't do it by our own willpower. There's no place for pride or boasting. We can only be grateful to God. We can only be grateful to God for doing for us what we can never do for ourselves. Do I believe that God has made me a free gift of the strength to stay sober? Meditation for the day. I must work for God, with God, and through God's help. By helping to bring about a true fellowship of human beings, I am working for God. I am also working with God because this is the way God works, and He is with me when I am doing such work. I cannot do good work, however, without God's help. In the final analysis, it is through the grace of God that any real change in human personality takes place. I have to rely on God's power, and anything I accomplish is through His help. Prayer for the day. I pray that I may work for God and with God. I pray that I may be used to change human personalities through God's help. Daily Reflection, March 6th. The idea of faith. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 47. The idea of faith is a very large chunk to swallow when fear, doubt, and anger abound in and around me. Sometimes just the idea of doing something different, something I'm not accustomed to doing, can eventually become an act of faith if I do it regularly, and do it without debating whether it's the right thing to do. When a bad day comes along and everything is going wrong, a meeting or a talk with another drunk often distracts me just enough to persuade me that everything's not quite as impossible, as overwhelming as I had thought. In the same way, going to a meeting or talking to a fellow alcoholic are acts of faith. I believe I'm arresting my disease. These are ways I slowly move toward faith in a higher power. All right, my friends, that concludes today's reading. It's some beautiful stuff as always. And again, I see a connection in all 4 readings today. But real quick on step 7, page 75, I love this line. We heard story after story of how humility had brought strength out of weakness. In every case, pain had been the price of admission into a new life. Yeah, the worst thing that ever happened to me was the price of admission into this new life that I have today. But I love the next line. This is on page 75, first paragraph. But this admission price had purchased more than we expected. And I believe it was in the 24 hours a day. Grace. That seems to be the common theme that stands out to me this morning. Grace. Receiving a free gift. Well, I shouldn't say free. Like they said, the price of admission was pain for me. But as I've said many, many times, I came into AA to get rid of this drinking problem. I had no idea all the beautiful things that I would gain, that I continue to gain. Well, we were talking about logic a little earlier, right? Looking at the tangible results. For me, when I first came into the rooms, I was amazed by all these people that were not only sober, but they seemed to be genuine and happy. Just like Bill when he sees Ebby, he's kind of blown away that his old drinking buddy, here it is, evidence right in front of him, regardless of his prejudices, regardless of his struggles with faith in the past, he sees tangible evidence of a miracle right in front of him, and that wrecks him. That's how I felt going into the rooms. So I gravitated toward these people. And then eventually I would do the steps with my sponsor. And I would experience peace that I'd never felt before. And fast forward a couple 24 hours to, March 6th today, 2026? I'm folding laundry. I'm looking out my back window. And my son is pushing my daughter on a little sled. I took a couple of candid shots of them just playing outside. And I think to myself, thank you, God. Thank you, God, that I woke up. Thank you, God, for changing my mindset to where I'm no longer obsessed about alcohol, but instead grateful just to be alive and sober. Grateful for my beautiful wife and best friend, my 2 children. Again, all I can think is grace. I just thought I'd stop drinking. I had no idea I could feel this amount of peace. And also be practical enough to realize that, hey, this is all a gift. And I'm just passing through. Life, it goes by in an instant. And I'm reminded of a dear work friend. She's in her 60s and her daughter battled bone cancer for a long time. And she's only in her 30s. And eventually she passed away. And I can just only think to myself, life is fragile. Life is a gift. And we're just passing through. Nothing's a guarantee. So all I can do is thank God for the gift of sobriety today, March 6, 2026. And how can I express my gratitude? I can try to put it into action today. I can serve everybody around me, put their needs before my own, and seize the day, just like old Mr. Keating from Dead Poet Society would say. I can seize this set of 24 hours by being of service and expressing my gratitude. So with that, my friends, I hope you know that I'm grateful for you. If you are sober today, you are a miracle, and I hope you realize that, and you're giving a great gift to those around you, and you have a unique superpower to help the next suffering alcoholic out there, or anybody else for that matter. And if you're not sober, I hope you know that you're a miracle as well, that you have value and worth, and your story's not done yet. And I pray, from the bottom of my heart, I pray that you would take the first step toward change today, and you do not have to do it alone. We are in this together, and the first word in the steps is we. And as always, my friends, I don't speak on behalf of AA, NA, Al-Anon, any other sect, organization, or denomination. I am just a drunk, honored to be here. And if we're given another set of 24 hours, I sincerely look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow.